What is up, y'all? How are we doing tonight? Welcome to Astoria Campaign Diaries session recap for session 8. This was the game we played a couple days ago. Had a lot of fun. We've got Penelope back at the table. The player who plays Penelope, I think she's going to be sticking around, so super excited about that. We got a full crew going, and I'm running at max capacity, but I am excited. So let's just jump into this. I'm going to try to stop touching the table because it keeps shaking. Okay, sorry. So we ended the last session. The party had just gotten back from Wyvern's Peak, where they had slain this wyvern, gotten material to make some upgrades for their weapons, and they had returned to Ravon, and they were hailed as heroes for slaying this creature that's been, killing their horses and killing their livestock and stuff like that. So they return, they get their upgrades made, and while they're doing this, Billy Bob Jr. has been going around town collecting debts from different people, mainly getting Dirty Tony's debt, and he goes back to the bank. He turns in like a small amount of the gold. He found, I think, like 1,200 gold it was 600 gold. By the way, my economy is super fucked up, so just get used to it. It's the one thing I can never get right. That and making overpowered homebrew weapons, but we won't go into that. Billy Bob Jr. returns 15 of this 1,200 gold and convinces the banker that this was all that he found. And he's like, don't worry, I don't want any cut of it. So the banker thinks he's like this really cool guy, even though he was only able to get this much gold. It's still, to a commoner, it's a lot of money, or a decent amount of money. The rest of the party, as they come back into town, Pax, he buys himself a new chain shirt because his is rusted over from being corroded by those rust monsters. Gaston has this big pierce in the center of his breastplate where the wyvern had broken through the armor and stung him, but he's keeping it, and he's wearing that as a badge of honor, which is really cool visual to think about. So he's got, kind of that indented thing going on. So Penelope has been hanging out at Land's Inn Tavern. She's been hanging out with Annie and talking to her and Picklefoot and just mingling with the locals and just getting to know the townsfolk. And Mateo goes back upstairs to his room in the tavern to try to read this book that he has. And it's kind of funny because in game, this book is like this strange warlock pact, thing that's he's having to bring souls to this patron that he's got. But out of game, I feel like Zach the player is starting to obsess over this book, which is like this really cool kind of intersection of like character and player, where like I feel like he's actually upset. He's always checking this book. What does it say? Trying to talk to it. It's crazy. But this time he tries to speak to the book and it has no response for him. He asks a question and it just acts like a normal book. So the party reconvenes at the tavern and they decide that they want to go, instead of returning to Astoria, the continent, they want to head east towards the old world and try to find out where these wagon trains have been going. So they all get together, they kind of catch up on what's been going on for the last day, and they go to buy some horses. And they head over to the stables because they want to travel quickly across the desert. And when we get to the stables, we learn a little something about Billy Bob Jr. Billy Bob Jr. Is, as a GIF, as this hippo humanoid, is a follower of Hippesus, which is a god that he made up, and it's one of like 3 gods in the whole campaign because pantheons are just too much. And if a player has their character believe in a god, that god comes into the campaign. And if not, I have like 1 or 2, but that's pretty much all you need. So Hippesus is this god. He's the lord of the hunt. He's lord of the beasts, that kind of thing. And one of Billy Bob Jr.'s convictions is that he brings this up to the party, that he is very against the ownership or domestication of one creature to another creature. And this includes, in his opinion, riding horses. And so this kind of becomes an impasse for the group. And Penelope speaks up at one point. She's like, hey, I'm a druid. I could just talk to the horse if you're feeling weird about this. Let me talk to the horse and I'll I'll ask them if they're cool with it. So Penelope walks over to the horse that's kind of standing next to the fence. It's just like, you're doing horse stuff. And she casts Speak with Animals and has this conversation with this riding horse. She kind of asks how it's doing, if it's happy. The horse is kind of thrown off by the fact that there's a talking elf standing in front of him right now. But they have a short conversation, and the horse basically says, first of all, I was raised from a young, what's a baby horse, a foal? I was raised from a young foal, and being a riding horse is what I know. And as far as I know, there's a lot of dangers out there. He's seen the wyvern come through and take his friends away. So he knows he gets shelter here, he gets fed. The horses are happy. However, this doesn't really sway Billy Bob Jr. He's very strong in his convictions. And so the party's arguing for a while, and then the party keeps arguing, and then the actual people at the table start arguing. This is going on for far too long, and suddenly I was like, oh crap, it's been like 20 minutes. So I was like, guys, we got to get past the horse thing. Let's make a decision. They put keeping the party together above a faster travel time. So they all decide, fine, if this is what you truly believe, then we're all going to walk together. And they head off into the desert. So the party heads off on foot into the desert, into the golden sands that they had just escaped from only a few days ago. They have a good amount of water, and they know that the oasis is only a few hours, probably 8 hours walking time, I think is what we decided on. And so I start to bring out the roles for heat exhaustion and dehydration, but they have ways to, they have plenty of water on them. They're keeping themselves covered up a little bit. They're able to stave off the heat. It's still pretty early in the morning as well. So they're walking through the desert, and they eventually come across this nomadic tribesman. He is of this clan called the Yasa. There's a fly in my apartment. Whew, I'm back. It's freaking 78 degrees in here, man. What the fuck? Okay, so the party comes across this wandering nomadic tribesman. He introduces himself as a member of the Yasa tribe, which is this nomadic desert tribe. And he asks them, what are you guys doing out here in the middle of the desert on foot? You could die out here. And they say that they're heading towards Serpent's Pass. They ask him what direction to head. He's like, that seems like a really bad idea, but none of my business. He points them in the direction of Serpent's Pass. They're going the right way. Then he says, before you go, have you seen any desert goblins in the area? He explains to them that there was a raid on his tribe, on his oasis, just a few days ago, and they stole their god. Now, all the players are starting to look around like, oh shit. They ask this guy, what is your god? What does he look like? And he explains to them, our god lives inside of this, magic lamp, like your classic magic lamp. They have this thing, and they've already summoned the god once. He informs them that, this fly, dude. He informs them that this god, they cannot rebuild or continue on until they find their god. And he protects them, he sustains them is what they believe. They make offerings to him. So he asks if they've seen it, and Pax basically lies and says, we haven't seen it, but we're gonna look for it. Because Pax thinks that they might still need to use this genie bottle in case things go bad at Serpent's Pass. So the party continues on their way through the desert, and eventually something comes into view over the horizon, and they see far off in the distance is this massive natural wall. It's like, picture like a giant cliff that just goes off in miles in every direction and shears straight up for like 200 feet. And over this cliff, there's like this thick mist that is kind of rolling over the edge and evaporating before it's able to reach the ground. Almost, if you've ever seen those waterfalls, they kind of start to fall, but they, dissipate. It's not a waterfall, but it's like this thick rolling mist that keeps rolling over the edge of the mountain, or over the edge of this cliff. So as the party continues towards this wall, they start to see various wagons, like these caravans begin to come into view, the same ones that they had been ones they were being transported in at the beginning of the campaign. They see one or two here and there, and eventually they start to coalesce more and more. They start to see more and more as they approach this wall. Everyone's kind of looking around, trying to see if there's like a way up, or what Serpent's Pass could be, what it looks like. Gaston does a perception check and rolls a nat 20, which happened to be the 20th nat 20 of the campaign, because we have this special magic item, this gem, that is slowly powering up every time they get a nat 20. So this thing powers up, they activate it, they go to this like pocket dimension where there's this giant like monolithic crystal that talks to them and grants them all a boon, and they all level up. Basically what's going to happen is they're going to be able to pick one cool, personalized item, like a crystalline item, that is going to be like a new thing that they have. They talk to this crystal. I know this is so far off out of what is going on, but it's a cool item. So they talk to this giant monolithic crystal. It kind of gives them a little bit of advice, tells them that they've done great deeds so far, but the dangers that they're going to face are far greater than any one of them could face on their own. So they must learn to work together to accomplish their goals. And it whisks them back into the desert. So this whole little crazy moment happens, and they're suddenly back where they are. And with Gaston's natural 20 perception check, he sees there are two like little statues. Each one is like two snakes coiled up, and they're holding bowls on each side. So they approach this thing, and they're kind of feeling out the area around. It's this big solid chunk of wall. They check it, it's solid wall, and they further investigate these statues, and they see that there are inscriptions. And these inscriptions are written in the same ancient language that they found on these missives that both Varg, the hobgoblin, and Blacktooth from way back in the first session had on his body. So they find this script, and they pull out the old missives and start using it to kind of translate what's written on these two statues. And they find that in the first one on the left it says cold, and on the second on the right it says blood. They're getting the idea that blood needs to go into these bowls, but what kind of blood? Penelope says, I could turn into a lizard, and we could, since I'm a reptile, I'll be cold-blooded. Maybe we could do that. They're kind of trying to brainstorm ideas, looking around for anything that might be possible. A couple times they go up and push on the wall to see if they can get through. And that's when Pax drops the knowledge bomb on his party, drops the big reveal. No one in the party previously had known that Pax is infected with vampirism. And my plan was the same thing that Penelope had said, was like, you guys got to go find a reptile, like go search the desert for a snake or something, and then kill it and pour its blood into these bowls. But Pax is like, I'm cold-blooded because I'm a vampire. And I'm like, can't argue with that, right? Pax then reveals to the party that he has vampirism. They're kind of taken aback at first, but after going through these harrowing experiences together, they all kind of say like, we've all got our issues, we've all got our secrets. He lays it out on the table, and he offers to offer up some of his own blood. So Pax cuts his hand and drips some blood into each bowl, and suddenly the wall starts to shimmer and fades away, revealing Serpent's Pass, this tall switchbacking root that goes cut right into the side of the earth and winds up going all 200 feet up to the actual old world. As they begin moving forward, this woman steps out. She's wearing like green silken clothes with like Mayan style or like Aztec style jewelry, and she's got these like vertical pupils, and she walks forward, and behind her are these 4 cultists, and they've all got their hoods on. They're all doing the creepy cult thing, and she looks at them and she sees that there are 5 people here. None of them are in chains. They all look relatively healthy and armed as well. So she stands back. She's like, what is this? What is this? Where is your prisoner? And in a kind of just reactive brief moment, Pax grabs Mateo, and Mateo suddenly like goes into just being like exhausted and trying to like play like he's almost dead, and holds forward Mateo. And so Mateo's playing into this, trying to be like, like I haven't drank in days, all that stuff. And she sees right through this. They roll deception, they fail against her insight, and so she knows that they're lying, but she has come to accept the prisoner, and that's what she plans to do. Very well, just pass him over and we will give you the treasure you require. And Pax says, we'll go with you, and we'll take him ourselves, we'll take him with you. And she says, I think we'll bring him, you just pass him over. And she casts suggestion on him. So Pax fails his saving throw and is forced to push Mateo into the grasp of these cultists, and Danesha, this serpent-like lady with like these weird pupils, and I'm doing the S's and stuff. The cultists come up and begin to shackle Mateo and walk off, and that is when our party goes on a full frontal attack. So we roll initiative and the battle begins. Right now, we've just got into initiative, so these human traffickers are not attacking the party, they're heading back up the hill. And this is a very tight space, it's only 10 feet wide all the way up, which I should have thought about more before, because this actually ended up playing much to their detriment in the coming battle. But the party's not waiting to see what they do. They move in and start attacking. A few hits are exchanged. Billy Bob Jr. backs up and gets into position behind the rest of the party with his musket that he's just bought. I don't know if I said that earlier, but Billy Bob Jr. did go buy a musket and a ton of bullets. And oh shit, and he bought some dynamite too from Boris. I completely forgot about that. But while they were in town, Billy Bob Jr. bought himself a brand new musket made by Boris, tons of ammo, and even saw the secret stash of Boris's shop, which had 4 sticks of dynamite, which he has and is saving for a later date. So he gets himself into position to do what he does best and take these long sniper shots at the enemy. So he's kind of backing up, keeping himself a lot of room to move, and the rest of the party begins to move in to try to get Mateo free. Now, 2 guys have Mateo grappled, so he's trying to roll out, but he's having a real hard time doing it. They're beginning to drag him away, and the rest of the party's trying to move in when suddenly Danesha begins to transform. Her skin goes like pale and flaky and sheds off as she completely transforms into this giant serpent creature that's 12 feet tall, has 2 arms, but the rest of it's a snake. She transforms into this hulking beast of a creature and casts fear on the entire party as much as she can. Penelope was hiding a little bit around the corner, so she couldn't quite reach her, and she's in this tight tunnel space, so she shoots it out in a cone. Gaston succeeds, he cannot be scared. Billy Bob Jr. is also able to pass his save, but unfortunately Pax fails his save and drops his halberd and is sent running back as far as he can away and hides behind a wagon. They continue dragging Mateo out. Their objective is to basically try to pull him and just get him up out of the view of the players. Penelope comes back around the corner, casts entangling roots to slow their escape. A bunch of the cultists get all caught up in it, but Danesha is not within the radius of these entangling roots, so she's free to fight. The first thing Danesha does once Mateo breaks free is constrict him, wraps him up in her tail, and is squeezing him as she goes to fight the other players. Penelope moves in and begins to see that Danesha is attempting to flee with Mateo. So, seeing that the entangling roots are doing their job, but Danesha is probably going to make it through, Penelope unsummons the entangling roots and moves her hand, these druidic leaves and spirits and salt water kind of swirl around, and she summons 2 brown bears, 2 grizzlies on either side of this group. This becomes a huge issue. Danesha is a large creature, the bears are large creatures, and they are unable to get through. She is unable to get through either side with all these people in their way. This is just a tight space, so she's trying to squeeze her way through, but there's so much going on, it's kind of chaotic. And eventually Pax breaks his fear, runs back into the battle, and picks up his halberd and finds his way to the other side of the group, I believe by summoning his Echo Knight and switching places with it. Gets on the escaping side of Dinesha and the cultists. Gaston, meanwhile, has been in the very center of this fight the whole time, and Billy Bob Jr. is back at the back just taking these killer sniper shots on Dinesha. I kind of forget, because he's kind of standing back from the chaos, so I'm like not really noticing that Billy Bob Jr. is standing back there and quickly like draining Dinesha of her health. He is just back there just taking these shots and doing a ton of damage on her, which I suddenly realized like towards the end of this fight, I'm like, oh shit, she's got like 30 hit points left. Like she's going down, and she had over 150 at the start. Gaston, meanwhile, he's all up in the thick of it, and he's using this new, it's like this crystal and power shield that he got from this monolith that basically you cast it like a shield of faith as a reaction, and it goes down on the ground in like a 10-foot line. Almost like a I don't know, like if you play Overwatch, it's like Reinhardt's shield, but it just like drops on the ground and it stays in that spot. So a player could get behind it and he could cast it as a reaction. Pretty cool ability we came up with. Dinesha realizes she cannot push past Gaston. He's too strong and he's holding the line. So she goes for his weakness. She casts suggestion on him and tells him to defend her and aid her escape. So he makes his roll, he fails. Gaston's eyes kind of glaze over, maybe his pupils kind of go like vertical like a snake, and he turns towards Pax, who is blocking with the bear Dinesha's escape. She says, clear the way. Gaston, with like tears in his eyes, charges towards Pax. Boom, he smashes down on Pax. Pax is like, what the fuck are you doing? Penelope has decided to get into the fray as well. Now, Mateo, I know I haven't mentioned him in a while. He is extremely frustrated because he has been constricted by this snake this entire time by Dinesha. It's a grapple with a 15 check. He's having a real hard time breaking out of this. He's doing what he can. He's like shooting cultists from like the constriction of this snake and like attacking her when he can. They've dropped all the cultists at this point. Dinesha's very hurt, and Gaston is clearing a way for her to get through. When Dinesha sees Penelope enter, she goes just ham on Penelope and drops Penelope. She does like 2 scimitar attacks and a bite, and Penelope takes tons of damage, goes down. She is fortunately brought back up by another player. I forget who it was, but things are getting down to the wire here. This escape has been completely just clogged up. Now the players know that Dinesha at this point is extremely hurt. She's bleeding all over. She's got these like bullet wounds all over her body. And Mateo has just cast Cause Fear on her, which she is now afraid of the creature she's holding. Her only objective now is to escape. And Gaston has opened a path for her to escape through. Now, the players don't know that she only has 3 hit points left. But on her move, she is going to be able to at least wind around and get around the other side of the wall. I'm trying to figure out a way for her to escape. But with this Cause Fear, she freaks out and lets go of Mateo as she takes off running. And Mateo asks, do I get an opportunity attack? And I'm like, yeah, you do. And all Mateo has is a dagger for a melee weapon. He rolls his attack and hits. As she lets go, he kind of like drives it into her tail and rides it down, like just like tears her open as she runs away. He rolls for damage and gets a meager 5 points of damage, but she's only got 3, so that's enough. So Mateo, with a simple dagger attack, is able to slay Dinesha. So our heroes are victorious against the first and very powerful version of a Yuan-Ti that they've run into. This is this is the one, Dinesha is the one who greets the outsiders. She has to hold the line, so she must be one of the strong ones, right? Maybe, who knows? Gaston holds his hammer high above his head. The entire party rejoices. Billy Bob Jr. just walks up cleaning his gun. He hasn't been hit a single freaking time in this entire battle. This whole thing was very much squeezed into a small space, and without very many movement abilities, this UNT and these fanatics, they didn't have too far to go. Penelope entangled them all and then blocked off both corners with two bears. So they're victorious. They're celebrating. Pac says, "Hold on a second," and he runs up these switchbacks. These things go kind of like straight like this, right up the mountain. So he goes around a couple turns to go see if there's anyone else in the immediate area because the party wants to take a short rest. Mateo tells the group before Pax runs off, he's like, "I am very hurt. I need to rest." And they've been walking through the desert all day, right? So Pax runs up these switchbacks a few ways around, and he asks, "Do I see anybody? Is there anyone, or do I hear anyone around?" And I hadn't thought of this, to be honest. But what an interesting question. So I asked Pax to do a perception check. He rolls a 10, or gets a total of 10. I see this as a failure. So now we are going to roll to see, because of that failure on perception, if someone's coming down this hill. Because, we could say, low perception, you don't see anything, but let's say, because I don't know, let's roll a d6 and see yes or no if someone's coming down this hill. So Gaston decides to rolls a 3, and sure enough, Pax hears footsteps marching down the path from above. And that's where we ended our session. So yeah, awesome freaking session. I'm already ready for Sunday. I wish it was Sunday every day, actually, and we could just play. But that was our game. The party is now making their way up Serpent's Pass into the old world. What mysteries await, we will have to see in session 9. So that was a blast. We had a super fun time. We argued about horses for way too long. But, in the end, it's all love, baby. So, yeah, I don't know, takeaways. I don't know. I might not have any takeaways this week. Just a fun session. So, yeah, cool. Thank you for all my players, for being my players. And I can't wait to see you guys next week. That's it, dude. Peace out. Later.